Thank you all for sticking around and joining our second presentation of the Online Block Party, a web series that celebrates first-gen college and underrepresented students on their journey to and through college. I hope you all enjoyed our previous presentation with Colgate University. Just in case you are just now joining us and missed the previous presentation, it's okay. We will be sending the recording for you to watch later at your convenience. If you are curious about your admission chances, feel free to visit College Greenlight and explore our 3,000 college profiles and check out our many tools that can help you understand what your best fit is, such as what are my chances calculator. And if you're joining us live, be sure to join the conversation on Twitter at College Block Party, #College Block Party 20. And we have the team at Smith here to join us. So, are we ready to learn more about women's colleges experience and how it can elevate your success? We are thrilled to invite Nikki Chambers from the admissions office and Smith's alum, Danielle Santos. Nikki and Danielle, welcome to the College Block Party stage.
Hi, everybody, and my deepest apologies. Welcome to our session called Life at Women's College. My name is Nikki Chambers. I am Associate Director of Admission, and I am Coordinator of Multicultural Recruitment. And I am so pleased to talk to you today about a topic that is near and dear to my heart, women's colleges, and why I think they are a great educational option for students. I am thrilled today to be joined by Danielle Santos, a Smith graduate and also a women's college advocate. Danielle, would you mind introducing yourself to the group, sharing your class year, your major at Smith, and why you think going to a women's college was a good decision for you?
As Nikki said, my name's Danielle Santos. I graduated in 2011. And when I was at Smith, I had no idea what I wanted to study until I declared my major in anthropology, cultural anthropology, with a minor in education child studies. So I was really interested in studying urban education, which actually has led to where I am today in higher education. So I work with CBOs all across the country to support college access initiatives and helping students connect better with colleges. But I work on the college side now at the University of Michigan in the admissions office there. And why do I think women's colleges are a great choice? So for me personally, I know that I wanted to go away from college and experience a totally new setting than what I had grown up in. I originally grew up in Columbus, Ohio. Went to a Catholic high school that was co-ed and was a very shy student. And for me, the women's college fit was a great decision just because it felt like a huge community to support me in my first time away from home. And it was just a wonderful experience to see all these women in leadership positions and kind of taking charge on campus, which I had just not been exposed to growing up in my own high school. So I'll leave it at that for now, and I'm happy to answer or talk a little bit more in depth about any and all of those aspects. But
thank you for that, Danielle. And I also have to say that I too went to a women's college, and I've spent probably the better part of this decade working in women's college spaces because I feel so passionately about the education that students can attain by entering these spaces. So I graduated from Mount Holyoke College in 2010, which is right down the road from Smith College. And then I spent the past 6 years in the Barnard College Office of Admission. And I really accredit that space to really giving me my start in college admission. And I just joined the Smith office in July. So I'm a huge proponent of women's colleges, and I'm incredibly excited to share all of this information with you today. We have a poll asking all of you to guess how many women's colleges are in the United States today. At its peak, we had over 200 women's colleges. But as it stands in 2020, we would be curious to have you guess how many women's colleges exist today. And it looks like from the poll, some of you have answered. We got 26. I see a few people fit in 55. Some people put in 46. And then others have 34. So it looks like we have about 52 votes for 53 votes for 34. And 34 is about right. 34, we have about 34 all women's colleges in the US. But today I'm going to profile the Seven Sisters. The Seven Sisters were founded at a time when all of the Ivy League institutions were all male, and there was no opportunity for women to attain an education that was comparable to their male-dominated Ivy League institutions. And with this mission, the first of the Seven Sister Schools was founded, and that first school was Mount Holyoke College. Mount Holyoke is located in Western Massachusetts. So if you can see my map that I have on the screen, that would be the college indicated by the symbol C. After Mount Holyoke was founded, then Smith was founded in 1871, and that is D. And the other Seven Sister Schools that existed at one point in time were Bryn Mawr, Wellesley, Vassar, Radcliffe, Smith, and Barnard. Vassar went co-ed in the 70s, I believe, and Radcliffe merged with Harvard. So today we have 5 sister schools. Bryn Mawr is located outside of Philadelphia. Barnard College is located in New York City on 116th and Broadway. Vassar College is, Vassar, now co-ed, is located in Poughkeepsie. Mount Holyoke is in Western Massachusetts in a town called South Hadley. Smith College is in a town called Northampton, and Wellesley is in Eastern Massachusetts, which is outside of Boston. To profile Smith, Smith is the largest of the Seven Sister Schools with a total undergraduate population of about 2,500 students. We have an average class size of 9 to 1. A student faculty ratio of 9 to 1 and an average class size of 19. We give an average need-based grant of about $46,000. 22% of our students receive Pell-eligible grants. 18% of our students are first generation. 33% of our students are domestic students of color. And I also have the graduation rates indicated here as well, and also the retention rate. And the retention rate is what percentage of our students who are admitted stay on campus all 4 years. So that is a great, so seeing that in the high 90s means that students not only make the leap to come to a women's college, but they are incredibly satisfied with their decision. Before we jump into all of the benefits and the outcomes of women's colleges, I would love for all of you in the chat feature, if you would share whatever fears, anxieties, or anything that you're thinking about the women's college experience. And I hope that we're able to address it as we go through the presentation. So if you're thinking of something that you might perceive the women's college experience to be, or any fears or anxieties that you have about the women's college experience, please feel free to use the chat feature. But I would like to begin by highlighting 7 myths that I have experienced or I've overheard students share through their journey of trying to discover whether or not a women's college is a good fit for them. And so the first one that I would like to demystify is that women's colleges are finishing schools. And that really couldn't be further from the truth. I think that women's colleges, one, are mission-driven. Mission-driven institutions mean that the mission of Smith is to educate women. So if I could read the first line of our mission statement, which is, Smith College educates women of promise for lives of distinction and purpose. So what that means is all of the resources that are on our campus are designed to educate and empower women. These are intentional communities that students join. These are academic and social environments where students, as a woman, you have a women-focused education. And I think that really inspires women to kind of pursue things that they normally wouldn't at a co-ed institution, because there's no perception of that male dominance there. Every field is designed for women at our institutions. Danielle, do you have anything to add about that myth, or maybe can share how that myth was demystified for you when you got to Smith?
Yeah, it's funny because this myth actually was not something on my radar when I was looking at women's colleges. But I can understand where the thought comes from, the idea of women's colleges as finishing schools, particularly because of the rich history of women's colleges being started as a way to counteract against these male-dominated Ivy League schools at the time, right? And so I guess the joke back in the day used to be you would go to women's college to get your MRS degree. And what I will say is, in some ways, I just really respect that history, and you see some of it stay through with the culture of Smith, in such that on every Friday in your house that you live in, you have tea, usually at 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, which is definitely not something I grew up doing. And then, but I found that it was a really great chance, just again, to really build together with that community, with people in your houses. A lot of times, Smithies, as we affectionately call ourselves, they're so busy throughout the week, they don't have time to necessarily stop and chit chat with people and catch up with everyone as much as they would. So the tradition of having tea with your housemates in your, or even dinner with your housemates in your house, is just a really nice and time-honored tradition.
Definitely. And I think that goes to speak to the social communities that are created where women are supported, whether it's in an academic environment or at a Friday night tea. Women are encouraged to dream big and to pursue those dreams with fervor and gusto. And I think women's colleges encourage risk taking. This is not the place where you're going to get your MRS degree. In other words, this is not the space where they might have been in the 1950s and 60s, where women went to get a degree until they got married and then they dropped out of school. These are not these spaces. These are the spaces where women go to really think about what their place is in the world and how this education can equip them to go forth and conquer and dream big. The second, and here we have a quote from a student that I'm going to read aloud for you that I think really kind of drives this misconception home. At Smith, I've discovered that I'm a lot more capable than I thought. Whether it's serving as president of the Student Athlete Advisory Committee or pursuing research opportunities, I have become more self-assured and ready to take charge. Being at a women's college has given me the confidence to explore new experiences, and being at Smith has taught me I can do whatever inspires me. And I think that that's really true. I think that being in these spaces really provide this empowerment that's really hard to articulate. But I think students especially feel it when they're there. That because your gender is not a hindrance to who you are and what you will become. The second myth: women's colleges are filled with catty women that don't get along. And I saw some of that, some of those myths that we asked students to drum up in the chat, definitely highlighted that as well. And I think that couldn't be further from the truth when it comes to what women's colleges actually do. With lower enrollment numbers and smaller class sizes, students at women's colleges are able to fully engage in a strong campus community and make long-lasting connections, not only with their peers, but with faculty and with admin. And I find that at women's colleges, students are so passionate about the things that they do that it really is more about a self-motivation than it really is about being competitive with somebody else or running to the library and ripping pages out of textbooks because they don't want students to succeed. I think that because this is such a tight-knit community, students are incredibly supportive of one another and will do whatever they can do to show that support, whether it's going to go visit a friend in their research lab because they've been in there for a long time and you know they haven't eaten, so you went to pick them up some food or drop off a cup of coffee for them. Danielle, in your experience at Smith, how true, untrue was this for you?
So I'm laughing again at the myth, because again, it wasn't something on my radar, but I think that for me, again, going back to that community aspect of Smith, that I really fell in love with. People are hugely supportive. I mentioned in my intro, for anyone who's just joining, that I went to a private Catholic high school, which was actually very competitive. We had about 11 valedictorians in my graduating class. So people were always asking you, what did you get on that test? What's your GPA? So to come to Smith, where people really don't care about your grades at all, I would say people more or less focus, especially professors, focus on what you have to say and how you're engaging with the world around you. And that was just a completely different mindset for me in an educational environment. Again, I mentioned that I was a super shy student when I was in high school, so it was also a very scary environment for me to be in, for people to always expect me to have an opinion about things. But I liked being able to explore that side of myself, just because people were honestly just very interested in my ideas and engaging with them. Even if you did have disagreements with people in the classroom or outside of the classroom, it was never coming from a place of vindication. I think people really just want to know your ideas and your rationale behind things. And then on the social side too, I would say I was shocked at, I mentioned Smithies are really involved, sometimes over involved, or I was over involved. But I think I was really touched by just any time a housemate had a play that they were debuting in, or in my house, I lived in Hubbard House during my first year through junior year, which is pretty close to like the music performing arts part of campus. So we had a lot of people in my house who performed in chorus and glee club and a cappella groups. So yeah, I thought I was going to have no places to go to keep me busy outside of class. And because everyone's just so supportive and just going to celebrate people out at their different performances, and at games and activities they're involved with. Sometimes it was just hard to fit everything in. So yeah, I would say that you see that theme of community really built in throughout the whole culture of campus, not just in the classroom, but through the house environment and social environment as well.
I'll also add that I think that level of community lasts beyond your 4 years at a women's college. It's not just these are the people who I've built community with for 4 years, and then that's that. As a women's college graduate, I still have my friends from when I graduated from Mount Holyoke. I was able to moderate a panel for our admitted students, virtually, of course, with 4 members of the class of 1999. And just hearing them reflect on their friendship, it was a nice reminder of how this sort of transformative experience really does stick with you for a lifetime, and you meet people that you would have never met had you not gone to this institution. Myth number 3: you can't have a social life. I saw also in the chat feature that someone was asking about affinity groups, and at Smith and at all of these women's colleges, there are a plethora of affinity groups. There are a plethora of clubs and intramural sports and organizations that students can join and participate in. And I think that because you have so many opportunities to engage in the community, you're able to really build the social life that you want to see at Smith. Also, Smith students have access to the 5 college consortium. So in the greater Pioneer Valley area, which is where we're located in Western Massachusetts, there are 4 other colleges that are about 15 to 20 minutes away from each other. So we have Smith College, we have Mount Holyoke College, we have Hampshire College, Amherst College, and the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, which is the flagship university for the entire state system here in Massachusetts. Our students have access to the classes that are at all 4 of those colleges, any social events that are happening at those colleges. If there's a club at one of those colleges that you want to join, you are welcome to go participate in that as well. So with the other 4 colleges, our students have access to over 5,000 courses. There is a free bus system that goes to all of the 5 colleges, running basically day and night, 7 days a week. And the other sister colleges within the 7 sister schools have consortiums with other colleges and universities. So it really does expand the opportunity that students have on campus as well. So your social life at a women's college is going to be what you make of it. Danielle, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would add what you said about joining clubs at other 5 colleges is absolutely true. For a brief semester in college, I was a part of the UMass ballroom dancing club. And that was really fun, having never ballroom danced in my life before. I just wanted to do something different. So there's tons of things you can get involved with like that. I think my roommate for a good time was Hampshire has like a their own circus, like a student circus. I don't know what it's called now, but at the time she learned how to do fire spinning. So yeah, literally you can think of a type of activity you want to do. It is out there, if not at Smith, at the 5 colleges. But Northampton itself, I want to just comment on, is such a lovely town. I just went back for a friend's wedding this summer, and it was almost exactly how I remembered it. It has the unique feeling of feeling like a small town, but there's a lot going on within it. So Northampton within the Pioneer Valley area is known for its very eclectic music, art scene. And the Calvin Theater, I actually have a lot of good memories of going to quite a few concerts. I think I saw Jimmy Fallon there when I was in school. And because Smith will often put on a lot of programming for students throughout the year, they'll often have partnerships where they will fund tickets for students to go see big acts that come through town. So I remember for Otelia Cromwell Day, which celebrates diversity at Smith, the university actually bought a bunch of tickets for students to go see the Alvin Ailey company that came through. And it was an amazing performance. My mom is actually originally from New York, from Brooklyn. So I remember telling her I went to go see the Alvin Ailey company, and her mouth like dropped open. She's like, I can't believe you went there. Those tickets are like so expensive. I've never had a chance to do something like that. So yeah, there isn't a shortage of things to do on campus or off campus, or whatever your fancy is in terms of having fun outside of school. So
Absolutely. And I think as someone who was also got to participate in the 5 college exchange, I think it was taking a class at Amherst and being in a co-ed history class that I really started to notice that this women's education was really doing something for me. I remember sitting in a history seminar with other Amherst peers that were, all modes of the gender spectrum, and seeing my counterparts at Amherst when it was time to speak up or contribute in class, not have their hands up. And I was often with my hand raised. And so just noticing that I was speaking without fear, without trepidation, in a seminar environment where women who were also getting a similar education, that liberal arts education, but the empowerment piece, I think, was what made it so transformative. Was I was used to being in a classroom environment where, as you were saying, you were constantly called on to speak. And so just because you leave that environment doesn't mean you're not going to speak up just like you always were. Myth 4, women's colleges are filled with wealthy students. Women's colleges are socioeconomically diverse, but women's colleges tend to be a little less tuition dependent than other co-ed liberal arts colleges. So what that means is Smith, along with the other 7 sister schools, we meet 100% of demonstrated financial need. So when you apply and you fill out your FAFSA, your CSS profile, when you submit that additional documentation, we will give you 100% of what is indicated that you need in that. So we don't gap students in any way. 58% of our students are on some sort of need-based financial assistance. And our goal is not just to get you to campus. We want to make sure that you are supported, that you know that there are resources on campus to ensure your success. And Smith is what I like to call a well-resourced institution. We are resource rich, and there are resources in abundance. We have first-generation college support systems. We have emergency funds that students can tap into. Let's say your glasses break and you need a new set of glasses, you can get funding for that. There's also a textbook fund. Textbooks are expensive and really run the gamut and can cost a range. And so we do have tech support funding and et cetera. We also have something called praxis funding, which means that we guarantee internship funding for every student on campus to pursue one unpaid internship during their time at Smith College. So if you find an internship in the United States, Smith will give you $3,000 to pursue that opportunity for the summer. And if you find an internship that's abroad, Smith will give you $4,000 as well. Danielle, do you have anything to add to this slide?
I mean, I will say, I think that this myth actually applies to a lot of higher ed institutions that are 4-year, whether they're public or private. This is a huge issue at University of Michigan, where I work, as well. But I was a student that was on financial aid at Smith and took advantage of all those amazing resources. And even while you are at a student at Smith, if your financial situation changes, which might happen in this time of COVID-19 that we're in, the financial aid office is so wonderful at just really walking through the whole process with you and figuring out what additional funding might be out there.
Our 5th myth, everyone is going to be the same as me. I saw someone in the chat feature grab at one of the myths that I had in here just about lack of diversity at women's colleges. And I know that these stats are similar for other 7 sister schools as well, that Smith College students come from about 47 different states and 70 different countries. 14% of our Smithies are international students. 33% of our students identify as domestic students of color. And as I mentioned earlier, 18% of our students are the first students in their families to attend college. I think that a lot of students really harp on the diversity in terms of what they see, but aren't really thinking about diversity within thought and diversity within thinking. And I think that Smith, because it has such a flexible curriculum. So we have an open curriculum. So students don't have any general education requirements that students have to pursue. And so you're taking classes that just pique your interest. So you can be in an English class with peers that are majoring in biology, that are majoring in anthropology, and really running the gamut in terms of their interests. And so they bring their perspectives to that classroom and make the classroom rich in that way in terms of diversity of thought. I think there is richness within diversity of thought too. And I think that a lot of students might think, okay, I identify with this political party, I identify with that political party, but people don't really dig into the nuances of what that means. So maybe you and your friends really all identify as, let's say, liberal, but maybe you have different views on the economy than your friend does, or you have a different view about climate change than your friend. And I think women's colleges really provide a space for students to really unpack and be really introspective about what they think and why, and really allow for students to really challenge their thoughts and challenge their notions in a way that really encourages students to re-examine what they think, but not forcing you to change your mind. Do you have anything to add, Danielle?
Yeah, this one was huge for me because one of the big reasons why I wanted to go away from home for college was because I wanted to experience a more diverse educational setting. So when I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, it was predominantly white, and I identify as mixed race. My grandparents are Puerto Rican and Indonesian. And so I always grew up being one of the few Latinos in my entire school, let alone my grade. So yeah, I just really wanted to get out there, experience different communities. And I definitely had that at Smith and met people, I mean, not just from all over the US, but including internationally, which was really neat to hear. You know, I had someone in my house who was from Germany, and to hear what that experience was like growing up for her in Germany. Or I had another housemate who was dual citizen in France and the US. So it was a great chance for me to expand my horizons on that front. Yeah, I know that we had talked about, Nikki, we talked about affinity groups before. Did we go into much depth with that before?
No, I think we definitely should.
Yeah, so I was going to say, the affinity groups that are open to people on campus, that is one thing I wish I had been more involved with when I was at Smith. Um, I would have loved to have been more involved with, like, Nosotras, for example, which is the Latinx group on campus. Um, but I did have an opportunity when I was a senior to be a leader for the Summer Bridge program, which is specifically designed for people of color, and they're in transitioning to college to get extra support. And so those were spaces for, just as a small examples of ways that you could not just engage with your own identity groups, but also just be able to learn more about other identity groups. Some of the meetings I did attend through No So Trust, a lot of times they would collaborate on multicultural events with any of the other affinity groups. So that was a really cool way to get exposure to different people's cultures as well.
The sixth myth I have up here is that you won't be prepared for the real world. I saw a couple of people write that down, and that is spot on. I hear that myth all the time. And so my snarky response for anyone who asks me, I always say, well, is going to a football game every Saturday really the real world? And is any college really going to be the real world? I wish college was the real world. I mean, having 4 years where you get to dedicate your time and your energy to learning whatever you want. It's such a special time, but I think women's colleges prepare women and non-conforming folks for the real world, because it gives students the space to kind of challenge their convictions, as we were mentioning, and really stretch themselves outside of their comfort zone. And I know that I have friends that are in various different industries that went to Mount Holyoke with me, and I'm sure Danielle does too, where they'll give a presentation in front of a large group, and at the end, without fail, there's always somebody that wants to know, where did you go to school? You present so well, and it's because you get that space to really stretch yourself and do things that you would have never thought you would have been able to do. And I think there's this confidence that women gain from going to women's colleges that prepares you for the real world, because you are in a space that is virtually unrecognizable in modern society. There aren't many spaces like women's colleges in the world. So when students come to women's colleges, I think I hesitate to call it culture shock, but there's something that feels unfamiliar because you've never been in a space like this before. And I think that women's college students are really prepared you have to be prepared to be uncomfortable, because it's in that moment of being uncomfortable that you're really stretched to go to a club that you would have never gone to before unless your friend had dragged you there, or to pursue this research opportunity because your professor is encouraging you to do so. So you're being stretched outside of your comfort zone, but there is an incredible level of support that lets you take risks in a way that no matter what happens, you will always be supported. Danielle, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, the favorite question that people ask me about having attended a women's college, only because, yeah, I wish the real world was run by women, or people who identify as women, right? There are so many great things that we do well, and frankly, I will say I think my education at a women's college helped me to prepare a lot more for the real world than I would have expected. And I mean, even though we don't live in a predominantly female environment in the work world or real world, there are a lot of spaces in which you are going to have to speak up and advocate for yourself and what you believe in. And I think a lot of that is due to sexism that still runs rampant in the workplace. And for me personally, as someone who's a trailblazer in the college access space, and I'm doing things that no one has ever done before, having that experience of pushing myself at Smith to step outside my comfort zone and speak up when I hated being called on in class, and having to lead so many different organizations has really helped me step into my own, here in this point in my career, 10 years out of college, when I'm trying to push things forward and make changes in my community that no one has really tackled in the way that I'm trying to tackle before. So in that aspect, I think it's not only great personal development, but also, again, that you have that great network of people, to lean on and call up if you're having, trouble, struggling with something at work, or need advice from friends about how to lead in the space that you're in, wherever it is, if that's STEM or education. But oftentimes I lean on my Smithies, who were my good friends in college. I call them up and get their advice on things. And they're just a really great support network as well in that regard.
So just to highlight two other quotes that I have here that I'll read aloud for you. At Smith, we find commonalities of experience with other students of different cultures or ethnicities. There are little ways we go about living, our habits and the things we value that are often the same. And then the second, Smith recognizes that making a difference in the world can be done through gathering women from all over, educating them, and then sending them back to uplift their communities. That resonates with a deeper part of me. And then the last and final myth: if I visit one women's college and I don't feel the fit, then all women's colleges are not for me. And I hear a lot of students say that, oh, I went to go visit one school and I didn't really like where it was located, or I didn't really like, this, or I didn't really like that. And I will go again to ask you, if you go visit you visit a large private research institution and you don't feel the fit, would you then go and eliminate all of the large private research institutions from your list? You wouldn't do that. So I challenge all of you to not do that here, and really try not to consider women's colleges as one. Every women's college has a unique academic community and a unique social community, unique opportunities for engagement on their campuses, and have unique academic and social communities. But I think our students walk away with similar outcomes and similar benefits. But the fit that you find at one is going to be your personal fit with the institution. So just to kind of review, I'm going to highlight some benefits of attending a women's college. I'll also highlight outcomes, and then we'll have time for questions. So for benefits of attending a women's college, women's colleges have higher retention rates than their co-ed counterparts, as I mentioned earlier. Women complete their degrees at higher rates at women's colleges. I saw someone in the chat ask a question about STEM-related fields, and women are twice as likely to pursue a STEM-related field at a women's college than they would had they gone to a co-ed institution. Women's colleges are also filled with mission-driven and dedicated and passionate faculty and staff who are really dedicated to supporting their students, especially in fields that tend to be more male-dominated. Graduates from women's colleges report more in-class experience with making presentations than their peers at other institutions. So as Danielle was talking about constantly being called on, and how I was mentioning that in my co-ed classroom, when I took a class at Amherst, they noticed that difference in experiences. I think it's really true because we're offered opportunities to speak more. Women's colleges expose students to multifaceted versions of leadership. So students are more likely to gain leadership experience and really understand that there's more than one way to lead. You don't have to be in front of a podium giving a speech or a webinar in front of thousands of people to be considered a leader. That there are plenty of people who are doing that behind the scenes leadership work, and those leadership roles are pretty pivotal in getting the job done. Women's college students are more likely to do research, and they're more likely to attend graduate school. And for another quote, as I applied to colleges, I was surprised by how much I didn't notice that Smith was a historically women's college. It wasn't an issue that factored into my deciding to come here. But what I do notice now that I am here is that when you have an environment largely comprised of women, you don't have to be defined by your gender. You don't have to worry about navigating a world dominated by men. It's why it seems easier to learn difficult academic concepts. I don't have to navigate thermodynamics and gender dynamics at the same time right now. So I like being here. I'm in the engineering department, and I don't have to fight to make my voice heard over by men's voices. I'm with people who are already as self-assured as I am. And for outcomes, so the Seven Sisters Network, now the Five Sisters, I would argue is probably filled with some of the most powerful women in the entire world. So just to highlight some Smith alums, Julia Child, famous chef, Mastering the Art of French Cooking, were the two cookbooks she wrote. She had the PBS show. Betty Friedan, Gloria Steinem, Madeline L'Engle, who wrote A Wrinkle in Time, Piper Kerman, who was the inspiration behind the Netflix show Orange is the New Black, Sylvia Plath, if you can channel your English class and if you've ever read The Bell Jar, she wrote that, and Yolanda King, who is Martin Luther King's daughter. And not only do you have the benefit of having this supportive network of Smithies, you also have access to the wider Seven Sisters network. So Mona Stuffin, who was the former chief of staff to President Obama, Nishata Shange, who wrote for Colored Girls as a Barnard graduate, Katharine Hepburn went to Bryn Mawr, and Hillary Clinton went to Wellesley. But just to kind of highlight some outcomes in terms of statistics, women's college graduates are twice as likely to attend graduate school than women who attend co-ed institutions. 81% of graduates from women's college continue their education and earn an advanced degree, and are twice as likely to get a doctorate or enter the medical field. And our students tend to graduate with greater intercultural competence and global knowledge. And as a result, students at women's colleges tend to be more successful in their careers. They tend to hold higher leadership positions. They report feeling happier, and they bring home more money each year. While women's college graduates are 1% of the population, women's college graduates are 20% of the women in Congress and 33% of women on the Fortune 100 boards. And I can mention that the first openly gay senator from Wisconsin, Tammy Baldwin, is a Smithie. So just kind of thinking about how that represents itself in Congress today, you will see the Seven Sisters alive and well in Congress and also on Fortune 100 boards as well. Danielle, I'd like to ask you, now that you're 9 years out of your program, how you reflect, as you reflect on women's colleges, what do you think is something that the women's college experience gave you that you take with you as you kind of are navigating your own workplace and your own workspace and your own place in the world?
Yeah. So as I touched on this a little bit before, but I'm working in the higher ed space, and what brought me to the University of Michigan was actually I did a joint master's program in higher education and public policy. And let me tell you, I wouldn't have never thought I would have ended up in that field because I hated math in high school and all through college. And so I was an anthro major. But yeah, what I love about being in a women's college environment, and particularly being at Smith, is just the sense of the sense of the ability to be able to do anything you set your mind to, and that things like your gender or your race or your socioeconomic class really shouldn't be things that preclude you from pursuing that. Um, whatever that passion is that is a part of your dream. And so for me, even though quantitative skills were not something that I was confident in, I took it upon myself to pursue that program. And I'm really glad that I did, because I think for me, as I'm trying to make the case to people in higher ed, both at my institution and across the US in collaboration with other higher ed institutions and organizations, you have to make the case a lot for why does this issue or problem matter that you're so passionate about. And so I'm glad that I have that ability to be able, and I stuck with that program, to be able to say, okay, because of the data, this is why this matters. And I would say that, yeah, Smith just really encouraged me to figure out a way to pursue what I want to do, but also to think about who I want to be on my team supporting me to get there. And so I've mentioned some of those people have been friends that I'm still friends with to this day. Some of them are professors that I were super influential in my thinking about urban ed that I still keep in touch with. And he actually reached out to me recently, Sam Intrader, to ask if I could help a Smithy, a current student, connect with an organization I had worked with for her January term internship that she was doing through the Urban Ed Fellowship. I had professors write me recommendation letters for grad school, and just the alum network is so vast too. When I moved to Chicago right after college, I was able to connect with the amazing alum network in that region. And many of those women helped me think about policy and access and urban ed as spaces that could be places for me to grow in my career as well. So I would argue there's a lot to be gained just from the women only environment.
So for anybody who has any questions or the resources that we've used, I have links here to the Women's College Coalition that collects data about women's colleges, the 5 College Consortium that I believe Maureen linked in the chat, are linked to the General Smith College website, the Smith Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, the Smith Student Financial Services website, and my contact information, which is nchamBers@smith.edu. Please email me should you have any questions. I'm happy to be a resource for you as you navigate this process. But with that, what are your questions that we can answer now that we have maybe just a few minutes?
Yes, thank you ladies so much for your time. Y'all made me wish I had went to a women's college instead. It sounds like a really good time. But you guys answered a lot of questions that our students had in the chat and in the question box. So thank you so much for a very thorough presentation. One question that I'd like to ask on behalf of the students, there was, a few students who asked about this. Can you share more about inclusive services on Smith's campus that include, additional minority groups like LGBTQA+ community, students of color, and then also talking more about resources for transgender, non-binary individuals?
So I'll start with some of the resources that we have on our campus, and then maybe I will turn it over to Danielle and she can maybe highlight maybe some of the things that she's experienced anecdotally in her time at Smith. But starting, we have the Office of Multicultural Affairs. And that office is run by a couple of very dedicated and passionate faculty and staff members who run various programming on campus for students of color. They also serve as some of the advisors for many of our affinity groups on campus. They also have their own set of emergency funding. So if, let's say, you break your glasses, or which is a very common thing that happens at Smith, you take a nap, you roll over in your bed, your glasses break, and you're like, I need $200 and I don't have it. So they have stuff like that. Let's say you experience a death in your family and you need to get back home, but you don't have the funds to buy that bus ticket, that train ticket, that plane ticket. They have funding for you. You can email them and they'll give you a response in 24 hours. In terms of supports for LGBTQ plus students, we do have that in terms of admin that are on campus, but also there seems to be on our campus just this ubiquity of acceptance. I think that college is a time where students, where they haven't had the space to kind of question their identity and societal norms, really take this space to really think about those things. And I think in that opportunity to think about your gender identity, in the opportunity to think about your sexual orientation, you're surrounded by other people who are also thinking about those things in a similar way. We have clubs and organizations on campus for students. But Danielle, do you have anything that you want to add in terms of what I may have missed?
Yeah, I will just add on to the point you made about how resources and support are integrated in the whole culture of campus. Even when I was at Smith 10 years ago, I would argue at that time, in general, there was not a lot of public conversations or inclusivity efforts going on nationwide around transgender issues. But at that time, when I was at Smith, we had a pretty high transgender population. And I would say, outside of the resources that are provided to students on campus, the queer culture in general is very much alive at Smith. Sometimes we would have teas that were focused around educating people about pronouns, which was definitely a new concept for me at the time. They have the annual. I don't know if they have this anymore, but at the time they had the annual drag ball, which was a time for the queer community to celebrate their culture and share it out with people across campus and get everyone involved. So I would say in that regard, it very much is a part of the Smith campus culture in terms of inclusivity. And it seems to have only grown since I've left Smith.
Absolutely. I would definitely agree with that.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing. I love hearing about these things, all the love and inclusivity and work that's being done to make everyone feel welcome. So thank you all so much for your time, for your presentation, for your expertise. We are at the 55 mark. So thank you all so much again. And everybody in the audience, thanks Smith for their time.